Hello coders. Today we're going to be talking about one of the main branches of machine learning called unsupervised learning. We're going to be looking at some examples and some of the main algorithms we typically use. Let's start with a simple definition of unsupervised learning. When we're using unsupervised learning, we're trying to make sense out of unlabeled data. So let's break this definition up. When we talk about unlabeled data, we mean that the data has no Y for input X. When we say make sense, we're referring to finding structure in our data or reducing the number of dimensions. As you may have noticed from this definition, we're not trying to predict anything, we're trying to understand our data. So let's take a look at a couple of examples to make this more clear. For example, let's say that you're working on an application and this is your plot. You can clearly see clusters of data. We refer to this as clustering or grouping similar points in your dataset. Now let's look at another example. Let's say that you're watching a soccer game in your flat screen TV. Let's assume that the flat screen TV has 1,000,000 pixels and the ball can be represented by 1,000 pixels. If the goal is to follow the ball, then we only care about the position, which can be represented with 3 values. Reducing the input dimensions from 1,000,000 to 3 values. This is what is called dimensionality reduction. You are retaining most of the information while reducing the number of dimensions. Another use case of unsupervised learning is anomaly detection, or detecting unusual or fraudulent transactions. We can also annotate large datasets that are hard or expensive to manually annotate, for example, speech recognition. We can also use unsupervised learning for data mining, where we might not know the number of output labels, or we might need to find some hidden pattern in the data. The last example we're going to be talking about is frequently brought together or association rule mining. This is where we try to identify sets of items that are frequently brought together. As we have discussed before, unsupervised learning can be used as a pre-processing step for gaining some insight about our data in order to design a better classifier. Now let's talk about the 2 main methods used in unsupervised learning. The first one, as we mentioned before, is clustering, or grouping similar data points. The main 3 algorithms are k-means, hierarchical clustering, and probabilistic clustering. We're going to be talking about each algorithm in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. We assume for clustering that points in the same cluster are very similar, while points in different clusters are very different. The second method is dimensionality reduction. And as we talked about it before, we're trying to reduce the number of dimensions while maintaining most of the information. There are 2 ways of reducing dimensions. The first one is called feature selection, and the second one is called feature derivation. For feature selection, you're trying to select only the best subset of features. Examples of this are forward and backward selection. For feature derivation, we're trying to combine old features to make new, simpler features. An example of this is principal component analysis, or PCA for short. Again, we're going to be describing the algorithms in a later video. Let's take a second and review what we've learned so far. In unsupervised learning, as we stated before, we're trying to make sense out of our data. We know that we don't have any labels and that we can use it as a pre-processing step. We also talked about clustering data or reducing the number of features. For clustering, we talked about the three main techniques: k-means clustering, hierarchical clustering, and probabilistic clustering. And for dimensionality reduction, we talked about feature selection and feature derivation. I want to thank you, and please subscribe for more on machine learning and AI.